Hey folks, welcome to another edition of Fitness Friday Posi-TIPS with Rachelle. Folks, I am so excited to continue this conversation on fitness facility leader and leadership no-nos. So important. And I know last time I highlighted the value of trust, hiring people that you trust, and creating environments and cultures within your facility or facilities of trust. That is so important. You think about employee recruitment as well as retention. I won't get into all the specifics and all the specific figures, but I will just tell you, if you don't already know this, is it incredibly expensive to keep replacing people, to keep hiring new people and keep replacing people. It is incredibly expensive. So keep your eye on that and do your best to hire folks that you trust, folks that have character. Again, I'm going to quote that from last time I shared a few times, that famous quote, hire for character, train for skills. That is so important. But folks, before I delve deeper here into some more HR, human resource related topics as they relate to fitness facility leadership, I have a couple things here, a couple topical areas that I wanted to share with you really quickly. I'm always interested in fitness trends, and I had a recent episode on fitness trends, and this one recently. This is actually something that I saw after that episode, and certainly don't want to wait till the next fitness trends episode to share this. And that is, I saw this on February 14th. Anthony Dominic, who's a content producer at Club Industry Magazine. I quote him often for this particular magazine, highlighted Anytime Fitness. There's an article on Anytime Fitness. And for those who don't know, I actually spent a couple years just as my own pet project studying Anytime Fitness. Very successful fitness franchise. For 2015 and 2016, Anytime Fitness was ranked the #1 global franchise by Entrepreneur Magazine. So essentially, and after that, as you would expect, have experienced great growth, particularly in international markets. That franchise is doing extremely well. Of course, here domestically in the U.S., but as well as internationally. And this article really made me smile when I saw it, because I said, yeah, they were continuing to nail their international growth strategy. So, Anthony Dominic of Club Industry Magazine on February 14th had this awesome article. And it is Anytime Fitness to open club aboard Antarctica-based cruise ship. All right, and I'm just going to, in the interest of time, read this quick blurb. Anytime Fitness is partnered with Chilean travel agency Antarctica 21 to open a club aboard the agency's newest cruise ship, which will operate from November to March, starting in 2019. How cool is that? And so really quickly, the second paragraph here I want to read. Anytime Fitness of Woodbury, Minnesota will become the first health club company in the world to operate facilities on all 7 continents when its new Antarctica club opens in fall 2019. Now, how awesome is that? Going back to my former sales director, and I know I highlighted him a few episodes ago, and Kevin McKinnon, when I was in my former industry. I just moved to Detroit. It was my first official sales job, and I remember asking him, he's very successful and done really well. And I said, so what's your secret to success? And I always remembered he always used to quote that, just even on regional conference calls, and that is, next level thinking always achieves success. And so that really is, when I think about that in the framework of Anytime Fitness and what they're doing in Antarctica now, first aboard a cruise ship. How awesome is that? First fitness chain aboard a cruise ship. How awesome is that? That was great news. And quickly here, from a marketing aspect, I'll be getting to marketing hopefully as it stands now around April timeframe, and that's certainly subject to change, just depending on timing issues. But I always, as I mentioned before, I'm always so excited at the beginning of the year to just see marketing and see what fitness facilities in particular are doing from a fitness perspective in terms of their marketing efforts. And certainly we've seen the ubiquitous direct mail pieces from Planet Fitness, and I've been receiving these for years and years, actually even years and years ago when I first moved to Novi, and certainly when I was a 5-year member of Powerhouse Gym. But certainly something, a newer offering that they have here is the no commitment, even for Black Card membership, because traditionally for many years that required a 12-month commitment to be a Black Card member. So that's something that's certainly newer, from what I understand, to this particular, to Planet Fitness, to this franchise. And also received a mailer from Powerhouse Gym, and I highlighted them, but this is of course a different one from the one I highlighted last time. But I can see from a marketing perspective, the owner, William Davish, is really stepping up his marketing efforts in the markets in which he still owns gyms. Of course, Novi, his newer gym in Commerce Township. Off the top of my mind, was Ypsilanti, Not sure if the Highland Park one is still open, St. Clair Shores. So his gyms in particular, he has really stepped up his marketing game. And so it's great to see. It's just, you always want to see folks fighting for their franchises, fighting for their particular clubs and facilities. And I want to challenge you to do that as well. So you think about this, and I mentioned that I can just see the marketing improvements compared to years past. So now, you join now and receive a free month of Powerhouse Plus. So I mentioned a few episodes ago that, he now has tiered membership. And I knew when Crunch was coming to the market in 2017 that things were really going to change. And Crunch has certainly put a lot of competitive pressure on the Detroit market, as I was certainly expecting. And they've really, as you would expect, caused other competitive chains and other gyms to really step up their game in order to compete. But I'm going to talk more about that next episode. But so they've got this now awesome offer. But listen to this. Never seen this one before from Powerhouse. First 50 new members to join in February receive a free Mexico resort voucher. So they're really, 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 Crunch Fitness months ago was raffling off a new Harley Davidson motorcycle to drive membership at their clubs. And so it's just cool to see this level of competitiveness increasing here within the Detroit market. And certainly this is here in the Novi, which I received these in the mail. But folks, wanted to highlight those. Is I know it's we're still here in the first quarter, and so some of you are making marketing decisions right now, and I just challenge you. Don't do what you've always done. This year needs to be different. I'm challenging you to make some changes, determine your ROI, or your return on investment in terms of what you've done in the past, and then determine your strategy for this year if you haven't already. Don't fall into the status quo trap of I've always just sent the same old direct mail pieces, and that's just what I've always done, so that's always going to do. Never mind the fact that direct mail pieces have a very mediocre response rate compared to other marketing tactics. So we'll talk more about that on the marketing episodes, but I just had to highlight that. Well, folks, now back to HR, human resource topics as they relate to fitness facility leadership. And I know I highlight this once, twice, sometimes 3 times a year. And so this is going to be the first time for 2019. It is such an important topic, particularly regarding leadership and fitness facility leadership. And that is going back to the classic book, Good to Great, Jim Collins. You think about, and let me just give you a quick recap because there's always new people watching and all of that. Quick recap. Okay, Jim Collins, very, 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 that book was just extremely, extremely influential and still is many, many years ago. And like I said, it remains influential. But essentially, in a nutshell, really quickly here in the interest of time. So looking at your organization, looking at your fitness facility. So what he did was they had a nice sample size of companies that they evaluated, and essentially they asked themselves, okay, what is it that causes companies or why companies have been able to go from good to great? All right, and I challenge you, think about for 2019, what is it going to take for you, even from an HR, from a hiring perspective, to go from good to great? All right, so think about that. So that essentially one of the main premises of this book is these are some of what these successful companies have done to go from good to great. And so number one, you think about this and frame this in an HR, human resource perspective, from a HR perspective, and say, okay, number one, there's 3 different things that they did. If we can think about it from HR perspective. Number one, you want to have the right people on the bus. So you as a leader, you as a franchise owner, whatever your leadership role is, okay, you need to make sure you're driving. You have the vision for your franchise, for your franchises. Okay, be a corporate leader. You want to have the best. Anytime you want to have the best lifetime fitness in the country in terms of revenues and all of that, member retention, all of that, whatever it is, whatever your vision is for success. Okay, you've got that. So you've got to communicate that to your leadership team and those above, those certainly below you, to make sure that they reflect and that they buy into that vision. But so if you picture yourself like just going along with this book from good to great, driving along, so you're the owner, you're whatever your leadership role is. Okay, you're the manager, driving along in the bus. So you're driving your bus, whatever your gym's name is, or your series of gyms, or your chain of gyms is, you're driving the bus, right? You're the leader. Okay, so you want to have the right people on that bus, essentially, in terms of employees. You want to have the right people on that bus. It is so important, having the right people. People that are qualified, people that want to be there. People that buy into your vision, people that aren't, are always kind of naysayers, and why are we always doing this, and why are we always doing that? Why do we have to do this, and why do we have to do that? If you're in a compliance-driven organization and you've got employees that are always, well, I don't understand why we have to do this, and why do we have to do that, and why do we have to follow this rule, and why do we have to follow it? And part of being in a particularly a compliance-driven organization, inside or outside of the fitness industry, is there's going to be a lot of rules, policies, and procedures. So if there's someone that is not amenable to something like that, okay, those are type of things you want to look at from a recruiting standpoint, having the right people on the bus. Number two, you want to have the right people in the right seats. So important. All right, if you've got somebody in a leadership role, and you can always see kind of hints of this, but if you've got someone in a leadership role and their heart's not in it, they don't really care about the facility. And this is often reflected in employment and online reviews about the facility. And somebody, regardless of what their tenure is, if things have really just slipped into a state of mediocrity, all right, is that person the right for the job? Do they even really want to be there? And this is certainly true not only just for management, for all employees. Okay, who's in the right seats? If someone has a great personality and they're always positive and happy, and they're always getting compliments, members are always complimenting them on their customer service skills, and yeah, you want to have that person at the front desk. All right, if you have somebody that you just got to think about where people's interests are, where people's strengths and weaknesses are, relative to the position that they're hiring. And these can certainly be determined or uncovered in interview situations where you can determine truly, that person may be hiring for this particular position, but they may want to move up, particularly if we're talking about a corporate chain, Jim, where there's several opportunities for advancement. They may see themselves here. What is it going to take for me to start here and then end up here? And so it's so important to have those folks in the right seats, because if they're not, then they're gonna fail, and it's just not gonna work out, and that's gonna be yet another person that's turning over. And particularly if you're hiring people and you're realizing that they're not staying long, that certainly can be indicative of the fact that that person wasn't in the right seat to begin with. So you want to have the right people in the right seats. And lastly, but certainly most importantly, they're all important, but this is a big one. You want to get the wrong people off the bus. The wrong people off the bus. I don't need to tell you, I don't need to go into a whole long explanation of the wrong people, but folks, problem employees and all of that, and this is why it's certainly important, and this is a Gym Leader No-Nos episode from an HR human resources perspective, and that's why it's always helpful, I think. I don't care if you've got a facility with 5 employees, or 3 employees, it doesn't matter, all right, or 300 employees. You always want to get some insight and some input from HR, from human resources. If in a franchise situation, there's HR consultants that can help you. You can reach out to your local chapter or a nearby chapter, particularly in a large city, of the society, SHRM, or Society for HR Management. So there's different things that you can do, but you want to do, because you want to make sure you're doing things legally, and you don't want to set yourself up for litigation and all of that based on perhaps discrimination or unfair termination, regardless of what the case may be. But you just do not want to have the wrong people on the bus. You just don't. And there's one quick point I want to make on this. And this is true in life. I mean, it doesn't even have to just be even in a fitness facility in terms of employees, having the wrong people on the bus. I mean, this is just true in life. When you think about it, I don't care if you're a member of whatever, any professional organization or community organization, and you just know you have seen this dynamic play out over and over and over again. Particularly somebody perhaps that may have been a member of that organization a long time ago, and they've been a member of that organization for a long time, and they're no longer happy. This whole concept of unhappiness, dissatisfaction, and just not being content is huge, particularly in any workplace, but especially in the fitness industry, where you have on the commercial side, you have very high turnover. And this whole aspect of this dissatisfaction and how toxic that can be, particularly if it's one employee, or it could be the whole team of employees, this whole aspect of someone who is unhappy. Because typically when people aren't happy, it affects other people around them. The level of toxicity will increase. Like I said, I don't care if we're talking about a nonprofit, or a church, or a gym. It does not matter. A traditional workplace, a Fortune 500 workplace, it does not matter. This one employee or several employees that are unhappy, and they're always complaining, and they're complaining to other people, And then all of a sudden everybody else is all negative and complaining when it always wasn't that way. And so you gotta have a great pulse and really listen to people, really kind of pay attention and observe and watch out for that aspect of chronic dissatisfaction. If employees are always coming to you complaining and they're never, again, offering solutions, but it's always complaints, and no matter what you do, they're never happy. No matter what happens, it's never good enough. You gotta evaluate, is that person in the right seat? Do they even belong on the bus in the first place, or is this somebody that will self-select and get off the bus and find another job, or in situations where the situation is just incredibly toxic, and again, this is something you want to consult with an HR expert on, and possibly you may need to actually get that person off the bus, and by other means. And so happens all the time, particularly in the fitness industry, so stay on top of that. And those are just 3 tips from an HR perspective that will certainly help your facility go from good to great in terms of hiring and in terms of employee recruitment and retention. So important, because it is costing you a lot of money. For those of you, I got to emphasize this point enough. Each and every time someone leaves, then you got to replace that person. Then it's just because you've lost time, you've lost experience, particularly if it's someone that's tenured. You've really got to get a handle on that and ask yourself, what is this? Why are people leaving? Why? Is there something I can do differently? Is it a leadership issue? Is it a management issue? Is it that person just wasn't a good fit issue? So it's so important to stay on top of those things and determine what works and what doesn't work. And secondly, I want to make a very, very, very important point here to piggyback off that last point. And we're talking about employee, obviously, departures and attrition and things like that, and the high turnover on the commercial side of the fitness industry and from a facility perspective. And that is this very, 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 very well-known concept that's known certainly from an HR perspective. And that is, employees don't leave companies, businesses, organizations, or in your case, gyms or fitness facilities. They leave bosses, supervisors, and managers. Let that sink in. Right? Let that sink in. That's deep. And if you're honest with yourself, if you're truly honest with yourself, and you ask yourself, and you think about your own employment history and why you've left positions, perhaps prior to the one that you have right now, why did you leave? If you ask yourself honestly, what role did a boss, a supervisor, a manager, someone else supervisor play in my decision to leave? All right, so it's so important to understand that concept. And those people who don't understand that, who neglect kind of why people leave, and they're not doing exit interviews and exit surveys and things like that to determine what's going on. Is it the environment? Is there a toxic employee that's causing people to leave? Is it is a person's management style? Is it just whatever? Is there some training and development needed amongst the staff because they don't feel equipped to handle the jobs that they're responsible for? Like, whatever it is. That's why doing employee surveys and just evaluating certainly where things stand on a regular basis, or quarterly, a couple times a year, as well as when employees depart. But that is huge, and I just want to really, really challenge you to think about that. Those of you who are leaders, that employees are often, they're more often than not leaving because of who is directly they're reporting to. All right, so that's important. You think about yourself, your own skills, your own interactions with your subordinates as a leader. Think about why people are leaving, and all of that is so important. I just did not want to miss that point. It's so, so, so important. Next, such an important point, and this is just a life lesson and we've all made this mistake. We've all made this mistake and I just want to frame this from an HR perspective, but it's certainly true just of human nature in general. And that is, you hire who you hire, not who you wish you would have hired. All right, so let that sink in. Let that sink in. Let that sink in. If you find yourself, you're constantly trying to change your employees, or you wish they were different, and micromanaging people, trying to get things done your way or a certain way, or whatever the case may be, you hire who you hire. And that's why developing an ideal employee profile based on position is so important. To think about now, who has just been an absolute rock star in this role? What characteristics, what personality traits did they have? What was their character? What type of work history did they have? What type of educational background do they have if necessary? Whatever the case may be, it's so important to determine what an ideal employee. And you can do that based on folks that have worked for you in the past, or perhaps that have worked for you even in past organizations. And a lot of that is going to be based on your own leadership style and your own strengths and weaknesses and how you approach subordinate relationships. But that is something that really needs to be top of mind, folks. And this is certainly true, as I mentioned, just in life in general. So many people are just trying to change other people, and they're just not satisfied with the person that they have. So they're always trying to make him or her, turn him or her into someone else, typically someone that they're not, never will be, never want to be. And that is something that, folks, you got to get a handle on that. And I know that I'm nailing some of you right now because you're sitting there thinking to yourself, smiling, like, man, she has really called my number on this one. Because it's human nature. You know, you have this ideal employee that you've defined and you've hired, and that person's been there for years and years, and you're always mentally thinking, man, why can't everyone be like her? Why can't everyone be like him? And whatever. And then there's, potential issues with favoritism accusations being thrown at you and all of this and that. And so, but I just want to challenge you. Spend a lot of time up front determining who you want to hire, as opposed to once they're already hired, wishing that you would have hired someone else, or wishing that you had an entirely different employee and trying to turn them into something or someone that they're not is a recipe for failure, for attrition, and for incredibly high turnover. And so that's just another point that I want to mention. And folks, the last point that I want to make here is very, very, very important. And I'm actually going to highlight this, certainly out of respect, and this is something that I determined actually, when it happened, that I was going to highlight this once or twice a year. And that is something, and this is something, going to the whole trying to change employees and all of this and that. And I know I'm about to call some of your numbers yet again. All right, some of you folks have made the decision, you say, Rachelle, particularly those of you in leadership roles, Rachelle is such an inspiration. Like, she just, whatever. She's helped me, she's challenged my thinking, my facility is better than it was, and whatever. She adds value, and that's just what I strive to do, and I'm just, glad to be of service. But you may feel so inspired that you make the decision to make your employees watch me. And so, hey, and this is what I'm about to tell you is probably going to shock you a little bit. And you're probably not going to expect me to say this, but somebody were to walk up to me, I don't know, at a networking event, Detroit Chamber, a networking event of somebody that obviously that I knew, and kind of whatever, Rachelle, it's good to see you on Fitness Fridays, just hypothetically. I also do non-Fitness Friday Posi-TIPS. Rachelle, I just, your Fitness Fridays, there's a lot of leadership stuff there, even when you don't do a leadership series and all of this and that. And so, you're such an inspiration. I make my staff watch you every week. This is just great. And so my response to that person who came up to me and said that is, oh, really? I don't think that's a good idea. And you're probably sitting there wondering, puzzled, thinking, why, Rachelle, why are you saying that? What are you trying to say? You don't think you're, worth sharing and passing along to other people? And I absolutely do, folks. But I'm secure enough in myself to know that doing something like that, because essentially there's by virtue of you doing that, and unintentionally, we're assuming you have the best intentions, you love your people, want to see your people do well, want to see your people grow, and that's all wonderful. But you have to understand, when you do something like that, what you're essentially telling people unintentionally is that they're not good enough. And there's an element to that also too. When you give someone unsolicited and telling someone to watch me, particularly in an employee situation where essentially they want to keep their job and they want to please their boss, whatever. So telling someone to do that, you're telling them essentially that they're not good enough, whether you want to or not. But also that is a form of unsolicited advice. If somebody comes to you and says, I want to reach the next level, and I want to be, 3 levels above where I am now, and I just want to really kind of work on my leadership development and all of this and that. If somebody comes to you like that, and then, okay, that person is seeking help, that person is seeking advice, and whatever, you think that's a good fit, whatever, then that's one thing. But to just do that, to just tell somebody, here, do this, watch her, or anybody, somebody like her. There's other types of people that you can do that with. But when somebody, and particularly it's not part of a employee development plan or employee coaching plan, that you're just kind of randomly telling people, hey, watch this. She's awesome, she's cool, or whoever it is, he's awesome, he's cool, watch this. It's unsolicited advice, and people as a whole and generally do not receive unsolicited advice well. Because like I said, there's that whole flip side of that of, making people not feel good enough, and then you're giving them unsolicited advice, but that just, kind of making them feel that no matter what they do, they're not good enough, and then they aren't going to measure up. And I highlight a lot of people on these episodes, so there could be that whole comparison thing, and you're an authority figure telling them to do something like that. So you could be unintentionally, and this psychologist will certainly tell you that, but employees that come to you and with an authority figure, they may have authority figure issues from their childhood, and so all of a sudden, you're telling them to do this, and they could essentially kind of mentally and psychologically place you in the role of a parent, and you're telling them to do this and this and that, and they're thinking to themselves, man, my dad said I was never good enough. My mom said I was never good enough, and this is whole, and I got to watch this every week, and I feel like every week or every time I go to work, I don't feel like I'm good enough. And so you just got to watch out. You just got to watch out when you do that. I mean, have a very clear purpose of when you're giving folks advice, and you got to really ask yourself, why am I doing this? Is it because, particularly as a leader, have I lost confidence in, if you're telling somebody to watch, Joe so-and-so every week or whatever, he's listen to this podcast, what is the reason? What is the rationale? Is that part of an overall people development strategy? Is it a learning and development opportunity, or is he just, you find him so inspiring and he has just really changed your life, so you feel that he should do the same? And folks are not, as a whole, gonna be receptive to that. And I'm just telling you, because this is what I do. When I speak and when I train, I know there's always, in any situation, anyone who does this, professionally, you always know there's always going to be a very small segment of any audience, I don't care how large it is, that is going to take the information and run with it and make things happen and change their lives. But most people are kind of stuck in the status quo and want to stay there and are just happy kind of plugging along. So you got to recognize that dynamic. And so you could be unintentionally, as a leader, kind of reinforcing people's insecurities that were certainly well developed before you even came along or that person got the job there. You could be reinforcing insecurities, feelings of inadequacy and inferiority, not feeling good enough. And so what is a person over time in a situation like that going to do? Leave. All right, so just think about that from your learning, from your training, development opportunities. What is the rationale? Have a solid plan of rationale and why. Explain to people. If you're in a leadership role and you think like, hey, she talks about a lot of leadership. Speaking of myself now, she talks about a lot of leadership topics, and I think this would be helpful. And that's wonderful. That's great. You have a conversation with the person and say, you know what, I think you're doing an excellent job, but I think, she brings some different, she's challenged my thinking, and I think she could challenge your thinking, and you and I can put our heads together and strategize on what we can do, as a leadership team, to really take this facility to the next level. Or we can, do our own competitive analysis based on her kind of lighting that spark plug in my mind and my thought processes of, hey, we really need to evaluate our competitive landscape here. Things like that, but you need to reassure people. All right, you're doing a great job if they are, or hey, I think this is just ancillary, give people the option to do it or not do it, but don't force people, because you got a situation where people are afraid and they want to please their boss, they don't want to lose their jobs. And that's just what I would consider a leadership pitfall. A leadership pitfall is doing that. And so I would just question that person if I'm at, like I said, the Detroit Chamber, and I run into somebody and they tell me that, oh yes, I make my people watch you all the time. And my question to that person would be, what happened to you? What has caused you to lose confidence in your leadership ability? Because there's something that you feel that you're lacking as a leader to be able to do that, to cause someone to do that, particularly with no rationale and it's not part of any plan. You could be feeling, and I'm about to nail some of you right. I know it, just intuitively. This is what I do, folks. You're essentially saying, well, this person can offer you something that I certainly can't. And my challenge to you would be, you can do anything that I'm doing right now if you put your mind to it. You can study fitness trends. You can subscribe to Club Industry Magazine. All right, that's free. If you're in a leadership role in any type of fitness facility, you can get that prescription free. Just Google Athletic Business, Google Club Industry Magazine. They're just wonderful resources that you can have access to, that you can do. All right, and so obviously if you can't, then there's different people that you can hire, you can read, you can learn, you can study, you can grow. But I just would always want to challenge you to be careful about delegating your leadership, even if you feel that you don't really, have any issues. If you're telling somebody you got to, you're telling your team, yeah, you got to watch every week, you got to do this, you got to do that, because I know human nature. That is somebody that is somehow or another lost confidence in their ability to lead. And unfortunately, in that type of situation, I'm not a part of your chain of command in terms of, we always think of the military, grew up in a military environment. And so I'm not part of your chain of command. So people aren't going to have the same level of kind of, oh, okay, yeah, I work with her, or yeah, she's here all the time, or whatever, she interacts with us. That's very, very different. All right, your leadership and your development opportunities should certainly be coming from within, if at all human possible, and being supplemented by external sources. So I challenge you to think about how you're leading, what are you doing, and lastly, I'm going to close with this. And as I mentioned, when I was highlighting that Powerhouse Marketing, was a member there for 5 years. June of 2012, I remember I walked up to Valley Fitness at the time, and the sign was on the door, we're closed permanently. And then many of us shifted over to Powerhouse Gym, was there for 5 years, to June of 2017. Joined Planet Fitness, and it's just been great. And so folks, but one thing, and I understand this because people do this, but to my last point, Rachelle, you're such an inspiration. And that's actually something that I mentioned I'm nailing, because I know some of you are doing it right now, but that's actually what I call a leadership pitfall that the founder of Powerhouse Gyms International, Mr. William Davish, did as owner of that gym. Had staff tuning in, Rachelle's Fitness Friday, Posi-TIPS, all of this and that for a long time, whatever. And that situation's obviously different because, he's the founder and he bought that gym, that particular location, when it was Fusion Fitness before, from Mr. Wright. But in that situation, again, the founder of the franchise owns it. It was very kind of laid back culture and all of that. So turnover wasn't a problem, in my opinion, particularly on the commercial side, because of who owned it. But a lot of gyms wouldn't fare that way. If facilities wouldn't fare that way, with people saying, okay, watch her, whatever, this and that. So a leadership pitfall, and the reason why, lastly, I call it a leadership pitfall, is because whether you're talking about an employee, the golden employee that you have that you elevate, or in my case, the golden member of Powerhouse Gym that you elevate, when you have your staff saying, oh, tune in, you got to watch her, this and that, she's awesome, and she inspires me. But the pitfall in doing that is, just in my opinion, it's always a great risk when you do that, is when the person leaves. And more often than not, they will. Eventually, and then your employees are looking at you like, this is the employee that was the golden employee that you made us listen to, small group presentations every week, and all of a sudden when that person leaves, your employees are looking at you like, nanny boo boo. You made us watch this person, and this person can do, was a golden employee, and then bam, he or she leaves, and your employees are looking at you like, ha ha ha. And in my case, the golden member left on July 11th, when I canceled my membership, a couple weeks after joining Planet. And then no doubt in my mind, employees are looking like nanny boo boo, ha 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 ha. You made us watch her all this time, and now she's leaving, essentially saying, your gym's no longer good enough. And as a leader, and I want you to put yourself in that situation, particularly if you're a founder of a franchise, all right, that is this Powerhouse Gyms International is a Metro Detroit-based franchise. They have locations around the world, but they're Metro-based. Got, between about 275, 300 locations. Founded in 1975. But you think about that. You put yourself in that position. You are a founder, you are the owner of that particular location, and your staff is looking at you. And that is not a good look. That is not a good look when something like that happens. Because this is somebody, in my case, me, that you elevated, and you made your staff watch me all the time. And then all of a sudden, on June 30th, 2017, the Fitness Friday episode is where I'm talking about I've now joined Planet Fitness, and a couple weeks later I actually canceled my membership at Powerhouse. And so that is not a good look. And I think we all, just as human beings, can relate to that in terms of how we would feel if we were in a position where, we had somebody that we believed in, we thought they were awesome, and then we elevated, even I'll say that even though it's me, you elevated them to a position that you don't know if somebody's going to stay or somebody's going to go. In my opinion, you tell somebody, to everybody, all employees, watch this. It needs to be like an employee training video that you've had done, or something coming from corporate, a spokesperson that's been hired to say great, wonderful things about you, and that is paid for that loyalty and to stay and do the right things, or something like that, something coming from corporate, or whatever the case may be. But a member, but an employee where you never know where they're going to stay, where they're going to go, whatever, it's just not a good idea. So I just want to challenge you guys, not to do that. Because if you watch one of my episodes or 5 episodes, there's 2 very important things in my life that I need. My 2 greatest needs are freedom and change. So there's always going to be change, meaning that there's no permanent gym for me. That's just not it. That's never been it. That never will be it. So there's going to come a time, when I'm going to leave. And I know, the next chapter of my fitness journey, and I can envision. I've put a lot of thinking into it, and I see myself. I really, really, really like playing it. Really like playing it. I'm gonna keep playing it. As part of my membership. So I'll probably likely be doubling up, having 2 gym memberships. And in that particular case, it won't be anything. It's not that I'm not unhappy. I'm very happy at playing it, or anything like that. But I definitely miss my pre-core EFX cross trainer elliptical. That was almost 25 years of my fitness journey, and 17 of those years, that was my favorite cardio machine. And I'd be lying if I didn't say that I didn't miss it, and I do. And when I travel, not to Louisiana, but when I'm in hotels, I always prioritize hotels that have pre-core in their fitness facilities and within the hotel itself. So miss my machine, but that'll be a situation where playing it is great. I really enjoy it, doing some great things, but also just on a practical level. I'm human. There's things that I miss. Years and years, that was my favorite elliptical, and I cross-train and use different cardio machines, always have, but I miss that machine dearly. So, but that's a situation, folks. So think about that. I'm going to just leave this episode right here where it is. I'm going to continue conversations during this next probably 3 to 4 weeks here on leadership. And so, folks, just think long and hard. It's expensive to keep hiring people. It's expensive to lose people. Spend a lot of time on the front end determining who you want to hire, why you want to hire them, what a good employee looks like, what a bad employee looks like. That's so important. Because you deserve to be happy, you deserve to be successful. And 2019 can be your year. It can be your best year yet. But I think we as leaders, we all need to do some time. We always need to spend time of self-reflection and just spend time saying, what's working, what's not working. Did I have high turnover last year? What happened? Is there some management development that I could be doing right now? Is there something else I need to learn? Is there some competitive pressures that are now in the market that didn't exist, and I've got employees running to the competition now? What is it? What is my competition offering? Is it benefits? Is it a better work environment? What is it? So, but you got to be comfortable asking yourself those questions. And at the end of the day, this can be your best year yet, like I said, but it's going to take time. It's going to take diligence, but more importantly, it's going to take commitment, an unwavering commitment to your own leadership, development, growth, and success. And so, folks, that's all I have for you today. I can't wait till next time. As always, thanks so much for your time. And to remember, I am positively passionate about your fitness.